First off, these people have spent a lot of time trying to get here, and if everyone could welcome them heartily to show your appreciation of the knowledge that they're going to impart tonight. So, if each of you can spend about a minute just to introduce yourselves on what you do and how you're relevant to the message tonight.
Cool. All right. Hello everyone. I'm Alex. I'm currently building a customer acquisition team at Envato, driving lots of traffic to their 8 marketplaces, teamforest.net being their biggest one. Doing SEM, SEO, retargeting, display media, email acquisition, all that fun stuff. Before that, I was running a startup called Y Audience. I dropped retargeting tags on about 60 random publishers and built data to target ads towards. Before that, I worked at TripIt, buying all their SEM and SEO, or buying the SEM traffic, driving SEO traffic. Ran display media, some stuff there, and then a bunch of startups before that. Generally spend all day beating algorithms of different kinds, and especially Google, but other ones as well.
Hi everyone, my name is Kirsteene. I work for Etsy.com as their Australian buyer marketing manager. I have a many and varied background. I have been a DJ at a lesbian club. I have found a vacuum cleaner on the side of the road and thought I'd make a really good bag and tried to make it into a bag and take it to market, which I failed at quite significantly. I did eventually, after a long time in the music and film industry, start my own jewellery business, which I ran for 5 years, and I went from being a very small market stall at Camberwell Market to selling wholesale to 90 shops through Australia and New Zealand. From that position, I met some people at Etsy. They gave me a job because I was so charming. And then from there, I moved from community manager after a year and a half into buyer marketing. So I was their first hire in the Southern Hemisphere, and we now have 5 on the ground here. I would say that my special strength is, apart from the fact that I can drink like a Trojan, that I am very good at making friends with people. So I work in PR, surprise, surprise.
Nice, I just bought something from Etsy last week.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Keeping my job.
Vinyl disco ball for the disco room at home. I'm Dion. I'm a sucker for startups. I failed in my first 3. My 4th was a extreme sports marketing agency. Spent a lot of time in the States at rocking parties, and was fortunate enough to sell that business. Started up the Lifelounge group of companies in '99, and we've got 6 businesses within the group. So as you can see, that startup and entrepreneurial flair really just is within the confines of our organisation. I suppose the focus for this environment would probably be in our digital media area within the organisation, where we've got lifelounge.com, which is kind of like a bit of a granddaddy of the internet these days. We've got a joint venture with Fairfax as well with The Vine, which is news and entertainment, mainly geared towards young people. And just over a year ago, we launched Everguide, which is like the Seek for live event seekers. So finding out where you want to go and what's on, linking people with venues and events.
Cheers. James Tuckerman, Anthill magazine. 10 years ago, this August, I quit my day job and moved home with mum and dad to launch a national business magazine to rival BRW, or at least that was my goal. You've all been there. You call mum and dad and say, "Mum, can I move home? I want to launch a magazine to rival BRW." And she says, "Sure, just show me your business plan." Yeah. Fortunately, she did let me move home. I launched Anthill magazine, and for 5 years it was a national print magazine. We won Best Small Publisher in Australia twice. And then in 2009, we made what was regarded as a bold decision at the time, and we ditched the print magazine completely to go 100% digital. And we encountered headlines like Anthill magazine bites the dust, and the competitive media is lovely in Australia. Somewhat impartial and objective, and the other one was Anthill magazine, latest victim of the financial crisis. But fortunately, within about 6 months, we were listed by Nielsen Online Ratings among the top 50 business and finance websites in the country, sitting comfortably above the Adelaide Advertiser. Yeah, that there was 2009, 4 years ago. Since then, we've basically been an online business. Strengths and superpowers is probably community engagement and building an audience. When we were a print magazine, one of our main goals was obviously getting subscriptions, and that there was really the early days of online client acquisition. Then we actually didn't do it for about 3 years because all our money came from advertising revenue. And then earlier on this year, we launched the Anthill Academy, which is a membership model, an annuity model, and suddenly we found ourselves back in this space again. So I'm really looking forward to learning from these guys as much as sharing any little bits of wisdom that I can possibly offer. Thank you.
Thanks, James. Yeah, I think we'll start with the 3 cornerstones, so to speak, of customer acquisition, PR, marketing, and sales. Now, I know in my own business endeavours, PR was the most cost-effective and powerful medium. And I guess what I'd like to know in the audience as well is what PR strategies have you used in your own businesses to generate awareness of your product?
Do you want to start with me?
I'll start with Kirsteene.
Cool. Okay.
I agree, PR is very cost effective, particularly when you look at major features and if you compare them to how much advertising at the same sort of space would be, that it definitely does become really cost effective. I think that like everything that you do, PR should be treated as a test and also as a test and an experimental type of arrangement. So the most important thing about PR is that the simplest message is the most effective. So in all of my dealings with PR, you're much better off going out with one message to your target group. The other side of having that one message is that you have to ensure that the target group that you're going for is not too broad and that you really have an idea of the niche that you are trying to attract. So if I had a story about Etsy that was, okay, just let me get a bit of an example going on here. Okay. Stay-at-home mothers who should be using Etsy in order to run their craft businesses. If anyone read Sunday Life on the weekend, they had that new. They had the article about the new domesticity. So, okay, if I was going to see something like that and try and get some PR for Etsy on the back of that, it'd be like, okay, who in the PR environment is really interested in hearing about stay-at-home mothers and how they can make money on Etsy? Is going to be blogs that are interested in talking about issues that have to do with stay-at-home mothers, is going to be small business newspapers and supplements that are going to be interested in that sort of thing. So instead of going out wide to something like a PR wire thing saying Etsy is a really fantastic place for you to open up your small business, you would target so that was 200 people, you would target the 30 people that are really going to hear that message and possibly act on it. 1, you save time. 2, you're not wasting energy on people who are not interested at all in what you have to say. So as far as like putting together your PR message very quickly, you should target your audience and you should target your message. I think, yes.
I can add something.
Yeah, great.
We were forced to take control of our PR strategy because when we launched our first website, which was back in the year 2000, we had all of this advertising revenue and a bit of content syndication as well. But with the .coma, hindsight's a wonderful thing, we were forced into a position of working out how to monetize our audience because our business is all about aggregating audience and monetizing it. We were monetizing it through advertising. And what we ended up doing was we sat down and I kind of thought to myself, well, you know what? brands and and budget holders still need to be able to understand the audience, and the Lifelounge group of companies all sort of focuses on that youth and lifestyle audience, which is pretty important to brands. So what we did was we started asking them questions. We formed some methodology, and that methodology has gone on to become the country's leading report into Australian young adults. So we became an authority, and that authority is now, we have a product called the UMR, or Urban Market Research, and it's a subscription-based product that brands buy into to find out everything that there is to know about Australian young adults. So what we've actually created is not only a revenue stream for our business, but it's also data. And data is very valuable if you position yourself as an authority within your particular area of focus. And that's what we've been able to do. And we can, write press releases now and put them out on the wire. And, for very little cost, mainly just time, we're able to generate a lot of PR for our own business. So you can actually do it yourself.
That's true, actually.
One of the things that Etsy has done, particularly in our international departments, is that we've worked with universities that are doing studies on the new economy or how the new economy is working. We're working with them so that when they do their studies, we can piggyback on what they're doing and use that as part of our PR strategy. And there's lots of other resources that you can use as well, but we can come back to that in a minute, I imagine. Mark?
Cool. Yeah, I was just going to add the authority part. It's super valuable when you launch a startup. One of the first things people do after they go to your website is they Google you. If you have a couple real good websites talking about you, that's super valuable. Also, if you can put those websites on your conversion page, on your sign-up page, conversion rates typically go up quite a bit.
Sorry, I want to add something, because there is actually only 3 ways to get PR. Do you know what those 3 ways are? Yeah? The first one is that you need to be remarkable. What do I mean by remarkable? Worthy of being remarked about. Guess what? It rarely, if ever, happens. So I will get 20 press releases a day saying, I've launched a new iPhone app. I've launched a new business that does this. I've launched another business that does this, does that. Sometimes it even says, and I'm 11 years of age, or I'm 71 years of age. Most of them are still not remarkable. Some of them are. Well, what makes it remarkable? Worthy of being remarked about. All right, so that's really hard to do. The second thing is that you create something that's remarkable. We just heard here an example of when you create something that's remarkable. If you've got a database, you can survey that database, and you find out from that database that 21% of small business owners in Australia don't know what Facebook is. And then major media brands go, what? That's remarkable. So you create something that's remarkable. Great example, a friend of mine has a condom brand. Now you think that that would be remarkable? No, it's not enough. What he did is he did a survey and he found out which countries in the world are the easiest. International news. 3, be the cure. Right? Be the cure. So if your target market is small business owners that want to get onto Etsy, create a 6-part, 7-part series of stories where you can teach people how to grow an online business using Etsy at the end of it. But then at least the media organisations that you're dealing with see you as being helpful. So that's be remarkable, create something remarkable, or be the cure and educate. There you go. There's my 3 cents.
Great, thanks, James. Now, I'll open up to the audience. Does anyone have some questions on PR that you can ask these very experienced people?
The obvious one, which countries were the easiest?
Did you guess?
No.
Anyone have a guess?
Australia.
That's Australia. We wish. That was Spain. Spain. This is the unemployment. What else are you going to do? Drink sangria.
I would actually like to mention some tools that people can use.
There's a couple of tools you can use if you're interested in keeping an eye on what's happening in your PR landscape. The first one you can use as a small business or a starting business, I really recommend Slice, which is that you set up folders, you can put some keywords in, and then it will track all of the media surrounding that. I think it's highly invaluable. The other thing that I actually will say is a good thing to use, especially for us at Etsy, and also if you're working in PR all the time, and you'll find that a lot of people are going to be changing their roles. And while you need to make sure that you're forming a relationship with the person and not with the publication, I would also recommend something like a database service. MediaNet AAP has a really good database service. It is quite expensive. If you can go in with a couple of other people, I didn't say that publicly, it would be a good way to amortise the cost, I think. But they're two tools that I think you should use in PR, for sure.
Any more questions on PR?
Yeah.
Yep.
As a lean startup, like a bootstrapping startup, trying to minimise customer expenditure without any media content, what would be the best way to sort of approach journalists, engage with journalists, apart from the being remarkable and having a sort of approach?
Who wants to take this?
Well, I'd just say you've still got to have that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just wasting their time, and then they will never talk to you ever again.
I think as well, in addition to that, it's got to be quite relevant as well. So if you can pick something that is in the media that you can relate to, that is topical at the time, then they're going to be interested in it, and they're probably going to give it a good read over and a skim through. And the other thing is trying to get a referral in. So, finding somebody that knows somebody, so that you can actually, come to them a little bit warm as opposed to cold, will usually get you a little bit of momentum. And there are tools like your LinkedIn's in this world that everybody seems to, be on at the moment, and you can find connections in pretty easily these days. So,
I agree. I also think that I think PR comes down to good old-fashioned research, and a lot of times if you want to get a good result. So I think that have a series of publications that you want to be featured in. Study them, research them, look at who the writers are, look at who their freelancers are. In particular, freelancers I think are a really great way to get an in with a publication that you might not be able to. And I mean, there is nothing wrong with a little bit of charm. This is what's so great about LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter, is that if you really want so-and-so from this magazine to feature you, you follow them on Twitter, you find out what they're like. When you email them, it's like, hey, I love The Wire too, or I love cakes. Whatever, but you make that part of your pitch, is that you definitely go in. It's a very personalised service. I think that you can do a lot of things from a larger PR perspective, but when you're starting out and you really want someone to pay attention to you, I think it's the little things that really count.
Stalker. Proud.
Any more?
Yeah, I was just wondering, what do you think about where to target first, as in, I know I like to target the top tier first and then filter down, because if you get it on all the crappy blogs first, often the top guys won't touch you. Or what do you think about, like, go to TechCrunch first and then filter down from there, or what's your feel on that? Especially, James, you'll probably have a good maybe feel for who, like, would you put something up if you Google it after someone sends you it and it's on a whole heap of crap? Would you put it on there, or would you not?
We've, in our world, and this is why it's good to research, in our world, we will struggle to beat the TechCrunch people. So what we won't try and do is we won't like say, you've been on TechCrunch, so you're not going to be on our website.
I didn't think TechCrunch was one of the pieces of shit blogs.
No. That's the other way around. Where if they're in a piece of shit blog and we're not going to cover them. No, because basically you look at it and you basically say, is it a good story or is it a good angle, or is my audience going to be interested in this? There are situations where that is different. Like, you don't pitch today, tonight, and a current affair at the same time. You pitch to one of them and wait till they reject you, then go to the other, because if they find out that they're playing off there, it's a different situation.
They sign you up to, you can't until it airs. So.
Yeah, but there are tons of situations, and TechCrunch and Mashable and all of us, we find ones that we've read about on Random Sam's random blog, and we just go, oh, that's really cool, because you can see it trending on Twitter or on Facebook or whatever it is, and then you pick it up and you run with it. That's entirely how Mashable runs.
Yeah, I think your other option to that as well is to provide, as James said, angles, and then offer them exclusively.
Yeah.
Because if you can give someone something that they can write about and own, and then you can come up with a different angle for somebody else, then you're going to get a bit more Yeah.
Yeah, my background was in PR before I was a lawyer that went into PR that went into media, so I'm damned. But we did a work for AAMI, Amy Insurance, and we basically had lots of media organisations playing off against each other with this thing called the Crash Index, which is like a survey, once again, create something that's remarkable. And, you know, we're in Hobart, and they got 2 newspapers, so it came out to be, for the Hobart one, it was Hobart drivers more likely to drink and drive than Launceston drivers. And Launceston drivers more likely to give someone the finger. Different angle for different one, and we did that with every major newspaper in every capital city across Australia. Adelaide, they take drugs and they drive. Queensland, they speed.
And drink. I actually have a system that I use, which is something I've created myself. I'm a bit proud of it, but I basically have separated all of the media outlets into a 1 to 5 rating, and so I've worked out my 1 to 5 rating depending on what their reach is, their circulation and readership, whether they're national, whether they're state. So there's a lot of different ways that you can sort of work that out there. And then with anything that's internet-based, this may be controversial, but I use PageRank because of the reputation. So if something has a page rank of 5 and above, it's a tier. If it's 6 and above, it's a tier. If it's 7 and above, it's another tier. And then when I have something that I want to break, I go tier 1 down every time. But if it's something that I think that is really going to only appeal to a certain area, I will go to that certain area, to that niche first, absolutely. Because if what it is that you're trying to drive people to sign up to what it is that you're making or doing, then you're better off going to those people and getting a result than getting rejected left, right and centre, personally, from my own experience.
Cool. Yeah, the question was, where would you pitch your press release first? Would it be like the high tier, the mid tier, the low tier, crappy blogs, awesome blogs? Where would you go first?
Okay, now these guys are running some very large companies and would all like to be there, but all of us had to start up from somewhere. So what I'm curious about is what were your marketing tactics, strategies, tips and tricks that you used to go from nothing to something? Alex.
Yeah, it depends how low down you're starting. I've always been able to buy a lot of traffic pretty successfully pretty early on. If you can find a traffic source through paid search, for example, if you can find one little area that flows through and you can at least make your money back, from that you can kind of grow it out, put a coefficient on that and grow pretty quickly. As a startup, you have a lot more time to put into one ad group than a much larger company. A much larger company is dealing with many different products and clients and things. As a startup, you can focus on one little thing and just over-optimize it. One tactic I used was landing pages. I used a tool like Unbounce, for example, and I can marry the landing page copy with the ad and get a much higher conversion rate, higher click-through rate, pay less than the competitors. So that's paid search. Organic, I've dropped WordPress on a folder on the website, and then I just crank out copy based on keyword trends. I generally target 3 or 4 word phrases, which are less competitive. Again, the big companies focus on the 1 and 2 word phrases. Little companies, you can focus on some super niche thing that might be laser targeted to what you do. That's worked a lot. And then mobile, a lot of big companies just disregard mobile. Maybe not as much now as before, but there's a lot there.
Dion, you focused on internet technologies. Did your company use any other marketing techniques, more traditional?
Oh, me? Oh.
Yeah.
Alex. Well, I've always been I've always kind of been the data guy. So I just kind of look at what analytics tells me and run campaigns based on that. These guys would probably know better about kind of the big remarkable stuff because that's super powerful.
Etsy's in a really interesting position in that because we're so user-generated and very community-focused, we didn't do any sort of marketing or acquisition marketing at all for the first 7 years of our existence, and we've gone from 0 to 25 million in that time. So, but because Etsy is now spending a lot of time concentrating on new markets, which is markets like Russia, Israel, parts of China, certainly other parts of Asia as well. we find that now we're starting to look definitely into PPC, SEO, how we can redo our URLs so that they're better for SEO, how we can use keywords in our blog, certainly, and sorry, excuse me. But Etsy was definitely a person-to-person acquisition process for us in the first instance. So actually, I don't really think I have much to add there, apart from if you're a community-based organisation, certainly try and get your community, empower your community and make it easy for them to scale new users for you.
Yeah, look, I think that that's right, certainly from a community perspective. Some of our brands never existed, and so we had to, build them from scratch. So, we, have done things like partnerships. So, doing some media partnerships, giving them access to, your product so that they can, get some content from it which might be of relevance to them, and therefore your brand will exist within that environment, and you can leverage their audience. We did that, but just in a more of a joint venture partnership with Fairfax, which took a brand like The Vine, which didn't exist in 2008, and today it's got over 500,000 active users every month. So that's a pretty steep curve in a very short amount of time in a country like Australia. So partnerships work. It loves you too.
I do.
Hey, what's the age of the business here? Is it who's 6 months or younger, old? 6 months or under, young. Okay, what about a year? Who's yet to launch? Right, okay. When we launched, so it was a print magazine and it was 10 years ago, so it was a different world. But one thing that we did that was really smart is that we built an email database. Wild, huh? Radical. It was 1,200 strong, and we sent out an email inviting our market to subscribe to a print magazine that didn't exist yet. I think 400 bounced, but 150 subscribed. So what's that in terms of like a conversion rate? It's a really high conversion rate on an email e-commerce campaign. They all downloaded the PDF, printed it out, wrote their signatures on it, and faxed it in, and that was e-commerce. But the rules haven't really changed. And when I look at startups, whether they're in Inspire 9 or Blue Chili or York Butter Factory or whatever, the ones that are spending a certain amount of time building their databases and building their marketing strategies around what it is that they're doing in sync with their launch, find that when they do launch, or 3 months after they launch, or 6 months after they launch, they can go out to an audience of people and say, hey, look what we've got. And a couple of things that can happen. One is that everybody loves what they have, they buy it, and they make a whole lot of money. But more likely, the audience goes, meh. You know what you should do? You should do this instead. And that's pivot time. But that won't happen if you don't have the database to rely on. Alex there knows his shit. When he was just talking about unbounced pages and ads, that's a really clever combo to build up your own database. So you go, who's my target audience? It's people who run craft shops. So what's something awesome I can give to my audience that run craft shops? Maybe it's a 6-page fact sheet on how to run your business from home. Then you make that available for someone for a download, and you can run that for perhaps 3-6 months, and by the time you're ready to launch, you've got this database of prospective customers before you even launch, and it's cheaper and it's easier than PR. I think anyway.
Great, thanks for that. But I'm sort of curious, how did you guys measure the success of your marketing programs? What sort of metrics did you measure against? How do you know it was working?
Well, yeah, the golden place to be is making your money back, but that can take some time. So then the question I always get is, how much should I spend initially until I make my money back? And there's never really a good answer to that. I generally would recommend spend a couple grand and see if that works. Focus on 1 or 2 channels. If you're not making your money back, see how close you can get. I often look at pages per visit. If people are sticking around for more than a couple visits, or a couple pages per visit on average. That's generally all right. That's why I like doing unbound stuff with lead gen forms. You can often get people to sign up for stuff really cheaply, and it gives you a number to optimize against really early in the process. And even though you're not making money off those people right away, you can then say, all right, this keyword, this demographic, this geographic area, that's the place to advertise, and at least I'm building the list. And then when you have something ready to sell where you'll make your money back, you can focus on that channel right away.
From a PR perspective, it's extremely hard to measure comms campaigns. It's something I wish I had the magic answer to. Unfortunately, I don't. We concentrate a lot on new visits when we do major campaigns. So, for instance, we've just done a multifaceted partnership with L'Oreal Melbourne Fashion Festival, which was Etsy with Federation Square, TFIA and LMFF, and we had 5 different programs running within their program. And from there, we did see significant lift in Melbourne and the surrounds to new visits. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to tell whether or not those new visits have come particularly from that PR campaign and the campaign of other projects that we had around it, or and whether they're going to convert, unfortunately. But there is strength in new visits, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty much been said. It is somewhat harder to measure, you know, the effectiveness of PR and certainly ad campaigns that aren't online. When you do spend money in SEM, you can measure it, and it is, you know, very transparent. But as well, depending on your business, you're also building a brand too. So a brand needs to be visible. It needs to be seen in relevant environments. It needs to be, you know, understood. And some of that can't necessarily be measured, you know, in such a tangible way. But so long as you're seeing growth and you know, and your numbers of you know, new recruits right through to engagement and repeat visitation, you know that you're doing the right thing and you're in the right environments. And when we launched Everguide, which you know, is an events listing business ultimately, we did some outdoor stuff. We did some stuff in venues. You know, we did some radio stuff in a partnership with Nova, and when you put all of these things together, plus your online activities, you really do see the spikes, and you know that it's working. It's a little harder to work out which parts of those are working unless you broke them down and just did them at different times. But when you're launching something, you've got to try and go as big as possible. You've got to try and pull in all of the favours that you possibly can. You've got to be smart about your campaign and the messaging in there so that it is, you know, quite single-minded and people do understand what it is. And, you know, off the back of that, you can start to see what's working and, you know, and push the momentum.
Yeah, 1 and 1 does equal 3. When you're starting off, it's like my dad used to say, how do you eat an elephant? How do you eat an elephant? One little bite at a time. But once you've done a few different things, the Dion approach, where if you can do like 3 or 4 things, don't do anything for 6 months, and then do 3 or 4 things over a month, and you'll get an exponential return. But what was the question? It was how do you measure?
How do you measure the success? What sort of metrics are you looking for?
We launched the Anthill Academy on the 4th of April. Can anyone see that? That's what my email inbox looked like for the next 24 hours. Can you see that? What's it say?
An order has been placed.
It says an order has been placed by, an order has been placed by, and it's just line after line of orders coming in. That's in my world. I'm really obsessed with measurement, and I think that if I'm going to do anything, it has to go right back down to that bottom line. So if you're starting off with a metric such as traffic, the next question is how much traffic then can I then convert to an email address? And how many email addresses can I then convert into getting them to complete a longer survey so I can identify them as a hot prospect? How many of those people have signed up for my autoresponder series of emails so that I can build rapport with these strangers in an automated way? And how many of those people who sign up for those series can then convert into my purchase? Now, yes, like that. A guide to go by is that the affiliate marketers of this world, do you know those guys, those affiliate marketers that send you those emails that are about 4 lines, and they say, check out this awesome thing, and then they try and sell you some Facebook plugin, and they send you like email after email after email. If you get on their list, they're almost impossible to get off. Those guys have a valuation proxy for an email. Those guys know that one email is worth $1 for every month that they have it. So an email will be worth $12 for the course of a year. Now that means that some people are worth nothing, some people are worth a lot more. But it basically means that if someone who's doing that can convert an email into $12 over the course of a year, that's probably a pretty good starting point about how much you should spend to do something like acquire a traffic visitor, to get an email, to get a prospect, to get a customer.
Great, I'll open it up to the crowd. Who has questions about marketing for the panel?
Just like you said, obsessed with data, love data. When, it's probably good for Alex, I'd say. When you first initiate something, what are you looking at? You look like 6.5 times you spend to get back from it, or are you looking at what? Like, do you have something in mind that you usually try and target?
Well, yeah, it depends on what you're selling and what the lifetime value is of the user, obviously. I mean, yeah.
If you're like an email sign up, even if it's just an email sign up, you put a value on that. And then you just do some modeling and try to talk to people in the space. That's generally the best resource. Maybe someone who just quit their job, for example, that'd be a really good one. And try to figure out, from that person what a benchmark is in terms of the % of people that will open that email later. Do you have any rough idea in your head that you usually try and target?
It really depends on the vertical and the product and all that. Generally assume that people won't come back. That's a safe assumption, but they probably will if you do a lot of email marketing and stuff.
I mean like a ROI, like return on your investment. You have.
What's the price of your product or service?
Oh, I don't know, we'll say $69.95.
$69.95. What's the margin on that?
Oh, fair bit. I target a number in my head. I'm just wondering what other people.
That's how you begin. You pull open a whiteboard and you say, my margin is $50.
Yeah.
How many people am I going to have to get to my site to sell one thing, and how can I increase the conversion at each of those steps? So you might start off by saying, I'll get a 5% conversion or a 10%, and you make some random guesses.
A good safe bet is 1%. Say 1%.
I would say 1.5. I usually work on about 1.5. So I do customer lifetime value, I look at my CPA, and then I look at conversions from there.
So if I'm working on a project, so I mean, I know that I'm in the lucky position that I'm at a company that's been going for a long time, and I have a lot of resources that you may not have access to, but we use a tool called Kussowski, which you can get your customer lifetime value from, and then our data wonderful people who I consider gods, and every time I go to the US I give them Tim Tams, they love me. They work out my CPA for me, and from there you work out your conversion. So we find, as a general rule, 1.5 on any sort of like online advertising, particularly if it's display. 1.5 is pretty generous. And if we're doing anything in email, we find that our lift is much higher. So I'm certainly a big fan of going to email before anything else if you don't have a very big budget.
Cool.
Anyone else? Yep.
Yeah. Specifically regarding Etsy, just wondering, when Etsy goes into a new market like China, for example, do you find that the consumer side of the market is more difficult to build than the creative designer side of the market? And if so, what are the specific things that you look to do to build the consumer side of the market?
I have to think about that for a minute. Okay, so we find that in a lot of our new markets, the reason that we're concentrating them on is because they have a particular sell side strength happening. So Etsy really relies on our sellers as they're our core market. We have more buyers than we do sellers, but our sellers have a tendency to stay around for a little bit longer. We recently, our international VP, our international lead product manager, and Elena Berkowitz, who works she works as our China consultant. They just went to China, and they said it was really interesting in that in China, a lot of people want to sell on Etsy, but because it has a very different sort of culture, that a lot of the things that we've set up for our sellers, because we have our seller handbook, which has got lots and lots of articles on how you can be really successful on Etsy, which is really important if you guys are talking about having a resource that you can give to people. I mean, I definitely think if anyone's using your product as like they're going to be using it as a seller or something like that, then, you know, I would have that. But that's just an aside. We find that a lot of people there are wanting to sell on Etsy, but they don't quite understand the idea of handmade, because Etsy's one strength compared to something like eBay or selling on Pinterest or selling on Instagram or Facebook or all those sorts of things is our marketplace. You know, you have to be handmade, you have to be vintage, or you have to be selling a supply. So in China, because of the language difficulty, and this is what's happening in all of our new markets, is that because we are needing to readdress that language difficulty, that sometimes it doesn't translate. So that's why we're working really hard on those new markets. And we're really relying, as far as scaling, we're really relying on our community in order to become more prevalent in those markets. So for instance, we have a team in Italy who translated the entire site for free because they love Etsy so much. And we have people translating into Turkish and Portuguese and Russian at the moment. So that's certainly a way that you can, that's one of the ways that we're working at the moment. I hope that answered your question. I have a feeling I went on about 20 tangents. I have a tendency to do that. I get all excited about Etsy.
So yeah, there's a couple things to think about internationally. Obviously language is big. Also, can people pay you? For example, in Germany, the big thing is to pay with invoices. That's just what people do, and they pay their invoices on time. There's also a big cultural difference. Generally showing someone that kind of looks like them. Seasonal differences are very big. Some people go as far as creating special emails for different markets, for example. As a marketer, you kind of have to pick and choose which battles you want to fight. If you created the perfect marketing campaign for every country and every language, you know, that's a lot of marketing campaigns, that's a lot of work. So you got to kind of find which opportunities make sense. Also, as a startup, as a small company, I think there's a really big opportunity to focus on one market specifically. For example, advertising stuff, I found it much easier to sell stuff here than in the US because there's a lot less competition. You can speak to Australian value propositions. There's a lot of opportunities there, and probably the same thing in China.
Anyone else?
What do you think about Facebook as a marketing tool?
One person can answer this.
We use it and it works.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it work for a lot of businesses. I mean, I've got a friend who's got a jewellery business. She says that most of her referrals come through Facebook when she posts stuff on there, and you know, it's new stuff. And you know, for us, we use it you know, more as an acquisition tool, so we can, you know, use it to, you know, communicate en masse and drive people through to you know, to our digital products. So it is working, and it does work, and you know, it does have mass following, so you are able to target quite well through it as you know, as a means for acquisition. It's changing a lot too, so you know, there are more hurdles now in using it effectively than there have been in the past, but yeah, for now it's still working.
I find it more cost effective than Google AdWords. I'm getting a lot better result from Facebook ads than I am from Google AdWords. It was really interesting to watch that video before when he was talking about changing one thing. It made me think of a campaign that we ran on Facebook, and we changed one little weird thing, and it had quite one of those radical difference things. I like the expression growth hacker. I keep hearing that. I really like that idea of like tweaking and testing and changing. But what we would do is we would run an ad, and the ad would offer something of high perceived value to the target audience. Get this 238-page ebook on how to raise venture capital. The ad would only appear to people who have expressed an interest that they're interested in entrepreneurship and that they're only interested in Australia. That ad would click through to initially a landing page outside of Facebook, which would then say, put your email address in here and get the thing. Now, what we then did is we discovered that if we put that landing page within Facebook as an app, not only was the conversion higher, but the cost of the ads dropped.
You can also remarket to them.
And yeah, and the cost of the ads dropped. That was cool, right? The next thing that we discovered is that, and a lot of people don't like this, but I'm a metrics dude. So basically, I just follow the numbers, right? The next thing we discovered is we'd put up the like gate. You know what, does anyone know what those things are? So you click through and it says, you can get this ebook, but you must like us. And they become a fan of your page, right? Now here's the interesting metric. So the ad was the person was seeing the ad, clicking through to the sign up page, or clicking through to the like gate, then getting access to the sign up page. All right, 100 people, say, click through on this ad and hit the like gate. Does anyone want to guess how many people clicked like out of 100? I'll be Larry Ender for a minute. Someone said 20. Higher.
55.
Lower. It was 50. So basically, we were spending $1 to get a click-through, so it was working out to be, so that's what it was. How many people of those 50 do you think gave us their email address? 50 out of 50? That was exactly right. It was 100%. It was 100%, right? So we were spending $1 on the click-through, half of them were clicking through, so that's $2 an email address. We decided to make it easier for them because we wanted to increase the conversion rate. So we got rid of the like gate. Does anyone have a guess what the conversion rate was? 5 out of 100. 5 out of 100. So it went from $2 an email to $20 an email. Really interesting, and I think that there's a rule in that: involvement begets commitment. So when the chap from StumbleUpon was showing it, how he broke down the form, so there was a very easy first step. Then they would have gone through, then it perhaps would have asked for a username or asked them to upload a photo or whatever it was. But involvement begets commitment. They'd taken that one step like a gambler, but they'd invested, they'd committed, so then beyond that there was no going back. Sorry, I just thought I'd share that because it totally blew my mind. But Facebook, yeah, I think it's a really strong tool.
Thanks for sharing.
Oh, sorry, can I just add like one little bit to that? There's a couple of tools you can use and also a good way to test it. One tool you can use, which is really great, is called OfferPop. It has like all of these different tool apps that you can use, like to set up competitions, to get email addresses and things like that. It's really cheap, it's really easy to use, and I think in some instances it's free if you're like very small enterprise. And also, as far as advertising goes, those down the side ones, I'm just not for them at all. I prefer sponsored posts.
Questions? Can you direct the question to one person? Yep.
This is just in your early days, I actually noticed when you said that you got a large email address when you want to take something. I'm just wondering, what particular angle did you go with? You mentioned that ebook has something that you published.
Well, in those days, email marketing really just didn't exist. You know, it was, well, it did exist, but I was 26 and I knew nothing. I would go to events like this, and I'd meet someone and I'd say, "Hi, Jonathan," and we'd shake hands and we'd swap business cards. And over about a year and a half of doing that, I'd collected about 1,200 business cards. That's basically as simple it was. But now it's a lot easier. I don't do trade shows. I don't do a whole bunch of other stuff anymore because just the conversion rate's just not the same as it used to be. But if there is one, one piece of advice or, gem of wisdom that I would like you to think about, and anyone that's doing this, is that I met a guy called Wang Xiang. Does anyone know that name? He's, I didn't know who he was. I met him at a bar, and I knew he was important because these other guys were hanging around him. And I at the end of a conference, so I said to him, playing the Anthill card, "What can you tell entrepreneurs, Australian entrepreneurs, what advice can you give them?" And he said, the problem with most business builders is that they spend all their time trying to sell vitamins when they should be trying to sell headache cures, right? And you can imagine that with a broken English accent. It was very Confucianist. And I went away, what the? Anyway, I went away and I went, who is that guy, Wang Xiang? Anyway, he's the Chinese equivalent of Mark Zuckerberg, which kind of means that he's probably wealthier and more influential than Mark Zuckerberg. So he's kind of a big deal. And I went away and I went, what the heck, what did he mean? And the truth is almost everyone in this room is selling a vitamin, i.e. whatever it is that they're offering is making someone's life better, making them stronger, making them healthier. But I know that I've drunk too much coffee today, can you tell? Which means I'm depleted in vitamin B. But I did not say to Scott, I cannot come because I need to go to the chemist and get myself some vitamin B. But however, if I had a migraine, I wouldn't be here right now, would I? The difference is we spend all our lives trying to sell our vitamins which have no sense of urgency attached to them. So when we're talking about generating interest in what it is that we do, we start by creating these lead magnets or calling cards, and we put them on unbounced pages, and they talk about how great we are. And the truth is, no one really cares. Whereas if you look into the deep, dark soul of your target audience and say, what is it? What is it that's going to appeal to you? Then think about something that you can create which is going to service that need, service that headache, and tap into that sense of urgency. Then you get a higher response. And you do it professionally, and you do it well, and you build a relationship with that person, and then they get to know you over time because you have become the cure. You've become the headache cure. That's how I'd go about in terms of generating leads and getting interest in what I do from strangers, often before, but you can do that before you launch.
I think the version I heard was having a difference between vitamin and Viagra. But next, any more questions on marketing? To who? Yeah, who would you like to direct the question?
Hello. So you talked a little bit about how for the past 7 years that's mostly on person-to-person marketing.
Correct.
And this was, I guess, with the artists and the craftsmen that you guys work with, and mostly on community development. So did they just walk in and know how to sell, or did you have to kind of educate them, give them tools? And if so, what was the education material and the tools that you gave them that actually helped them sell stuff?
I think Etsy has got one of the most interesting communities in the world, and I love the web. I love the interwebs with all my heart. And I think one of the really interesting things about Etsy is that it was literally just one guy's idea that he came up with because he wanted somewhere to sell his computer covers. That's when you actually had a desktop. And he had these things he used to make that he would cover them in this wooden. That was, a while ago. But to your point, we have a couple of different areas where we look after this sort of thing. One of the first things that we have is we have the seller handbook. So that is written by our seller education team. We have a team of 5 based in the US. We also have people who work with them as agents who also work for Etsy but in our international teams. So we have an international team in the UK, Australia, Canada, Germany, France, and we also have floating teams that are looking after our new markets. So they write articles, and we have a seller handbook which is how to start selling on Etsy, through to more detailed things just how to use SEO, how to put your tags together properly, how to use PR, how to target for your market, how to take photos properly. We have online labs that people from all over the world can sign into, and they can learn things and speak to other sellers. We also have in-person labs that we have in Brooklyn at the Etsy office in Dumbo, and we also have the seller newsletter, Etsy Success, which comes out 3 times a week, which is written by a seller education team. So we use a lot of different areas. We use, we bring people into Etsy with content, and also them being successful is us being successful. We only grow because we're a company that needs our users. We're so user generated. If our users are not successful, we will never be successful. So that is really important. So yes, we definitely have education going on all the time. And one thing I've noticed that we're doing recently is that there's been a lot of seller-to-seller education. We have an Etsy ambassadors program that's running in Canada, where successful sellers who are based in universities are onboarding people, acquiring people to sell on Etsy and explaining to them why it's a great thing to do because they've had the experience. It's me going, I was an Etsy seller for 5 years, so I feel like I can talk about it from some, idea of knowing what I'm talking about. But, some people who work at Etsy, they're nothing wrong with engineers, I love them, but just say they're an engineer, they've never sold a handmade earring on Etsy, so they may not understand that community focus. So it's really important to have sellers who have worked for Etsy, who are working in the industry and educating people. So yeah, I definitely believe that education is an extremely important part of a user-generated platform.
Cool. And it was a lot of trouble for people to sell before they started getting this education material, or how did it go? Without it, would they struggle a lot more?
Yes, I do believe for a lot of people, Etsy is their first entree into e-commerce. So I think that people would struggle without some clues on how to do it. We have forums, so experienced sellers who like the forums and like being part of the community would be more likely to guide people through that. By having an official guide, though, we're going to help people go from starting to successful, and that's the main thing. We want people to be successful more quickly when they start on Etsy. So we have a very distinct onboarding process that our engineering team are always working on to refine. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I have more, but I'm going to grab it later.
Okay, great. I'm very friendly.
Okay, last question on marketing. Whoever wants it has to put their hand up really high. He's waving more. Okay. Just who do you want to direct it to?
Well, I guess just to everyone in general. You've got email campaigns, you've got your Facebook advertising, you've got your blogs, and then you're measuring all these metrics. So how do you measure, or how do you collate all that information into one area where you can properly analyse it, rather than sort of, do you use a spreadsheet as something simple as that, or is there a better tool that you use to analyse that data?
Just one person. Alex?
Yeah, Excel works pretty well. There's one number, money, basically, money from that visit, and you can start doing some cohort analysis if you're building signups and getting them to pay later or whatever. Yeah, traffic source, break out all the campaigns, money made, referrals, all that.
Google Analytics.
Yeah,
Google
GA.
Yeah. GA prints out to Excel as well.
Can I ask Dion a question?
Is that allowed? Is it allowed?
Yeah, is that allowed?
That's not the dumb thing. That's not the He's such a disruptor.
Yeah. This guy is a master at strategic alliances. So when you start out, you start looking for customers one at a time. And it's really hard and time consuming. Then you realise that there's this second type of customer, and that's the one that has the giant database. And you start working with that person because they've got the big reach, they've got the big networks, and suddenly your life becomes easier. I'd like to know from Dion how you went about to create relationships to target this second customer.
Yeah, look, it's a fair question, and I think you've just got to, do your research on the marketplace and find out which partner is hungrier for it. So at the time that we did our joint venture with Fairfax for the Vine, that was just around the time that that Rupert Murdoch and News did the deal with MySpace. So we knew that on the global scale, and News being the rival to Fairfax within this country, that that they were creating a play to be able to access that younger market. So we went to Fairfax and said, how hungry are you to, to create a rival product, not so much the same product, but a product that was going to engage a younger audience that would then ultimately provide a platform or a springboard into the, the more developed mastheads. And so we went there and we gave them a presentation on youth. I thought it was pretty dumbed down. I sat there and after the presentation just had 6 blank faces, so I realised that Youth 101 needed to become something even, more simple. So, we got there.
We got about the Twitter. Tell me about the Twitter.
We got there 18 months later.
Hey, now Everguide, app, lots of big partners again. Once again, more partners.
I think that comes down to also creating products where there's need. So, we know that, that there's a big migration at the moment in terms of the way people plan what's on in their city, and it's moving away from the traditional print, street press, etc. Bill posters, all very costly, pretty hit and miss. Being able to provide a platform where you can filter, you can, create profiles and, get to the, the end destination, the event that you're looking for a lot faster, and do it in an environment that is digital, whichever everyone is on these days, provides for, content that people are interested in. So you'll notice that that the EG doesn't exist in the format that it used to on a Friday. Circulation of street presses are struggling as well. It's all moving into the online space, and we can do more with that. So partnerships with Nova, with Fairfax, with Media, are all happening now to get that broader distribution.
But there's a print magazine, print newspaper that's going to be using your data or something.
Yeah, so I mean, it gets a bit more technical, but yes, I mean, it's predominantly online, but there'll be some reverse publishing as well.
Yeah, yeah. But once again, I want to know, how did that happen? And I'm sorry to be leading a Dion here, but if you can make those sorts of relationships, it's a big leap forward.
It's honing in on the need and then being able to provide a solution to the need.
Oh, okay. Headaches, more headaches.
Just over that 18-month period, when did you know that you were going to get benefits?
The day before, the 18th month ended. No, I mean, it was a long process. It needed to go through multiple layers. Yeah, look, it took its time because not only was it a new product, but the structure of the deal was also something that they didn't have a precedent for. So it's always hard to get big businesses like that to change the way or get them out of their comfort zone and into an environment that is a first. But we got there. Persistence. And they wanted it.
Great. We're down to probably our last 5 or so minutes. I want to move quickly into sales strategy. But we had an interesting question on the Meetup website from Nick Wilton on acquiring enterprise customers. Now, he wanted to know, how do you identify them? How do you approach the key decision makers? How do you pitch to them? And how do you get that purchase order? Now, I've got 2 minutes allowed, and I need one person to answer it.
We have a little bit of experience with enterprise. I hope we can do something. Okay, so Etsy's just launched a beta called Etsy Wholesale, which we'll consider for the circumstances today our enterprise offering. So what that does is trying to get people who are no longer at the position of being Etsy sellers, selling one product at one time to one customer, to people who are able to do multiples selling wholesale. I'm sure we are all aware what the wholesale means. So how we've done that is we opened up as a beta on our site. We looked at the top sellers on Etsy. We sent them an email saying if they would be interested to be involved in being in our wholesale offering. Once it went into beta, we contacted them, asked them to onboard. Okay.
I actually do have a really simple, neat way. Sorry. Go for it. Anyone filled out a women's magazine where there's a survey and it says, does your boyfriend really love you? Yes, yes, you've all done it. You know, you've seen the survey, does your boyfriend really love you, and you filled it out. That's a survey, and they cater to curiosity, narcissism, fear, all sorts of stuff. In an enterprise environment, you want to get a really detailed, qualified lead, which means that human beings aren't necessarily going to provide that sort of information to you readily. A really short and sweet solution is to create like a survey or a checklist. Are you about to encounter a cash flow crisis? Are you startup ready? Are you venture capital ready? All these different things to go with it. And the best example I can give was a woman who I met who was selling seedlings, not to florists. She was selling seedlings to mining companies. Right? Because when a mining company goes and destroys a piece of the environment, they're not only ethically and morally obligated to restore it, but the federal government will pay them. And it's called the federal government's mining reforestation mining rebate. Checklist. Does your organisation qualify for the federal government's mining reforestation rebate? The 20 decision makers in the country told her everything about their businesses using that one little form.
Thanks, James. Now, we're going to do the last 5 questions, answers from everyone, just so we can wrap up the evening. If each of you can just put out one great idea that people starting out in their business can do to make a sale tomorrow or next week, what could it be? So if you could limit the answer to 1 minute per person, that'd be fantastic.
Think about it. You guys have one already?
Well, I know a very smart VC, and he told me that everybody lives in their inboxes. So if you can do anything that will get into people's inboxes quicker, do that.
Yeah, I think it's as well as focus. I think when you're starting up, you feel like you've got a million things that you've got to do to make it ready for market. I think focus on the one thing, and that is, how can I sell this and to who?
My biggest success was just building my personal brand first and sell it as you, not as this company you just started. And if you have some kind of expertise to sell, people are interested in you and want to support you generally.
I think just back to that idea of fixating on the headaches of your target market. If you're a web development company, don't tell people about your wonderful web development stuff. Think about what headaches someone has if they have a website, which means that they're probably a small business owner and they're also worried about how to sell more stuff.
Okay, the last 3 questions on sales. You've got to wave your hand quickly and dramatically so I can choose you. There's one.
How much time should you spend on marketing compared to the other parts of your business?
Who wants to answer that? Alex?
Next to 0 early on. Just build something awesome, build something remarkable. Let the kind of marketing come on its own, and then once you start seeing that stuff in Google Analytics, then start spending more time on it.
Ditto.
Another question.
What was the dumbest mistake that you have made that you would have eliminated
today?
Or perhaps that you learned from somebody else that you saw and then didn't replicate. That was the most valuable one.
James, surely you've seen a few.
Oh, I do dumb things all the time.
Not saying
you know, was it International Fail Day the other day? Love it. Do dumb things all the time. I don't know.
I really like that ad for Metro Trains, Dumb Ways to Die. That was kind of cool. Like, my kids sing that. It's like, it's just catchy.
Okay, last question.
Hang on. Yeah. Oh, no, I highly encourage you to try crazy ideas and fail regularly with marketing. I spend about 5% of my time and budget on just crazy ideas, and I've found that the average return on that is higher than the safe stuff. The thing is, you'll fail probably 100 times before you find something that works, but it's hugely powerful if you can do that.
Actually, yeah, that's true.
Never stop.
Yeah.
I actually do have something to add to that. I've just realised when I was pitching for a long time when I first started at Etsy, I would always go out with these like very highfalutin, very high-minded pitches to the press about, you know, Etsy is a part of the new economy, blah 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 blah. And now I say things like Etsy, home of the grumpy cat. And people just like so much more responsive. So I think that maybe don't overthink it.
We put out an email the other day. It was important announcement: entrepornography addictions can now be treated. Massive open rate. I was so nervous.
Okay, the gentleman with the beard and green shirt. Speak up, please.
I was interested, you were talking about Mr. Anthill man. Sorry.
That's me.
Yeah, you were talking about the looking into the deep dark kind of like, you know, recesses and fears of your client, your one key fan. I was interested in how you would say that kind of transfers into kind of like directly making sales,
Face to face?
Yeah.
Face to face. Basically, you know, you got Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I can't remember what's at the top, but it's probably something like food. You know, whatever it is. Yeah. But about halfway down, food's at the bottom. Is it? All right. Okay, me, I need food. It's at the top. But most of us, we're driven by fears and hopes. Fears and hopes. And you look at all these things, and it's usually fears and hopes. And you look at what does well on social media and whatever, it's fears and hopes. Or, you know, those ads late at night. Are you a 30-something-year-old guy suffering from premature baldness? I am. Can you feel me? You know, fears and hopes. But there is hope. There's hope. There's a face-to-face pitching technique that a friend of mine, Anthony Gaddy, made up, and it was so cool that I actually gave it a name. And now if you Google it, people talk about the Gaddy pitch. And it was just something that he was doing, and I went, that is so cool, man. You've just got to give it a name. And it's 3 sentences, and it goes like this. You know how target market plus problem What we do, benefits plus feelings, in fact, example. So you meet someone and you say, you know how startup business owners have so many things on their mind, but they've got no place to go to find out clear, succinct, instructional advice? Yeah! Well, what this meetup does is it pulls people together that can provide advice in a clear, succinct way so you can go away feeling elevated and optimistic and exciting. In fact, hopefully we just did it. Now, when you go and you meet someone for the first time, and it's great hearing Charlie before, because you walk up to someone and they say, what do you do? And you go, blah, 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 blah. And when I was 11, I had a lemonade stand, blah, 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 blah. Or the opposite worst, which is, I'm an engineer. And then the person, and then they say, that must be interesting, which means you're not interesting. But if you ask someone what they do and they turn around and what do you do?
I'm a designer.
Designer. You know how designers, right? They have this core problem that relates to what I do. In fact, I just had a recent client work on my work job, and it's exactly like yours. He was a designer. That there's a very effective target market plus headache, very direct way of doing it. And you know what? It sounds really artificial, me presenting it to you like that right now, but in a conversational context, it's not at all. And the funny thing is after you do it, the person usually turns around and says, that's the problem that I have. How much is your daily rate? And how many days of your time can I afford? That's what you hope.
Okay guys, the evening has come at an end. Now these guys have offered a lot of value to everyone, so could everyone please show your appreciation for these great people.